Hey fellas, I hope you join me for this video on one of the most underappreciated knives, in my opinion, ever made. What are those, Rusty? Those are the Winchester black box knives. So stick around for the video and I'll tell you why. Okay, so I think it's important that we recognize, when it comes to these traditional knives, that we recognize history, we recognize tradition. And so for those of you unfamiliar with this, Winchester made knives from 1919, which happened to be the end of World War I, up until 1942, which happened to be the beginnings of World War II. They stopped making knives in their factory in 1942, but they began in 1982 by authorizing a reproduction knife. Olin owned Winchester at that time, and they reached out and they authorized bluegrass cutlery. And bluegrass cutlery, I think I'll show you some of these as we're talking. That's what you guys want to see. Turn around. Oh, by the bluegrass cutlery, by the way, had only begun as a company in 1987. And they turned around and went to Queen Cutlery. And this is where an interesting story begins. So, Queen, when their master cutlerer was a fella by the name of Bill Howard. And I'll mention Bill again in this video. And Bill, well, the Queen Cutlery said, let's make these authentic and just as close to original as we can. We want to kind of do the same patterns. We want to do the same specs, the same build. I wonder if we can build it on the original equipment. So they called the guys at Winchester, went to a factory, and they said, let's go take a look. You know, I don't know what happened. But they did get the original equipment. And while they were down there, they said that's where the original equipment was. They said, hey, what's in these barrels? Well, I don't know. Open them up. And lo and behold, it's this bone. Okay, so that's one of my favorite things about this story is the bone. So they found barrels and barrels of bone that had been dyed and cut somewhere between 1910 and 1930. And they said, what are you going to do with that? So I don't know, you guys want it? And they made a deal, and Queen brought the original bone, the original equipment, and then the master cutler at Queen, the fellow I mentioned by the name of Bill Howard, said not only should we build them using the original equipment and bone, let's build them the same process, using the same process, which means making smaller pins, which means pinning the shield. So all of these have pinned shields. What's that, Rusty? That's where the shield is not glued on. It has a pin and they hammer it on, and it flattens out on the other side just like all these pins will. And it'll hold your shield on. Well, what's that mean? that means it's going to take quite a bit for your shield to fall out. I should be showing these off. So we have a knife built by Queen, who, under the quality control, if you will, of Bill Howard. And maybe you guys are going, what's so special about Bill? Well, Bill Howard went on in 2006 to start Great Eastern Cutlery, and that is also known as GEC knives. And if you are in the traditional knife world, you will know what GEC knives, the quality behind those. Okay, so these all have what's known as a 3-line tang stamp. That's a Winchester trademark made in the USA. They all have a model number, for example C2880.5, and the year that they were made. Winchester trademark, made in the USA. And so we got that. They've got 1095 high polish carbon steel, and something that's known as old bone, Utica bone, or Rogers bone. So if you hear those things in connection with these knives, that's what they might be talking about. So we all understand the old bone. This stuff made somewhere between 1910 and 1930. The Utica bone, I'm just guessing that's where the bone was found. Now, Rogers bone, what the heck? Let's talk about that. Something I learned in this process. You can see at least 2 different jigging patterns. See if you can see this. I find this on the jackknife. This, by the way, is called the small gunstock jack. Its number is 2851 and was made in 1988. And that's what the jigging is looking like here. So that's what Rogers jigging looks like. Yes, no, Rogers bone, okay? Come to find out, Rogers bone doesn't refer to a type of jigging. Now, if anybody has other information, please let me know. Rogers bone refers to a machine. So at the turn of the century is when we get Rogers bone. And the leading producer must have been a fellow by the name of Rogers. I'll take a picture of this for you guys later. Let's see here. Give me a second. I actually got notes for this. Rogers Manufacturing of Rockfall, Connecticut. And so there was a jigging machine, and that was his business. His business was to I got 2 of the same knife here, 2857, and I want to call this one, pretty sure this is called the Serpentine Teardrop Jack. So we'll go into these more in a second. But anyways, Rogers bone was referred to, what the guy did was jig bone, color and jig bone. And that kind of makes me think that Winchester, and this one doesn't have the best blade etch, it's rubbed off over time. Winchester would have bought that bone and then just bought extra, and it was sitting in storage, and when they decided to stop making, they just had extra stuff sitting there. Forgot where I was. So this is also an example of Rogers bone, but it looks different. Interestingly enough, I saw where this is called peach seed jigging. Somebody referred it to as peach seed jigging. So this is my trapper. Winchester trademark, made in the USA. And I'm going to do videos on each of these separately, and I hope you guys will join me. If you want to know more about each knife, model number here is 2904 and a half, and this one was made in 1989. Okay, back to the bone here. So Rogers bone is not a type of jigging. Rogers bone is done on the Rogers jigging machine, which was put out of commission in about might still work, but they haven't done any bone on it since the 1950s, about 1953. So anything that's called Rogers bone, technically is probably not. This stuff is. Well, that's what they're assuming, because back in 1910, Rogers was the guy to go to get your bone. Again, peach seed jigging, it's the same on my trapper as it is, and this one is known as a Texas jackknife, the 2967, and it's kind of like a muskrat, and it's also a swell center, and we have like a spear point and a clip point. So very interesting. You can see great build quality on these. And then my last one is kind of my favorite out of the bunch, and I should bring up, let's see, there are 24 different patterns. These were produced from 1987 to 1992, and they ran out of the old bone after making 40,000 knives. So it's believed in 89-ish is when they ran out, and you can definitely tell. I see a trapper on sale at eBay with made in 1990, and it has the same model number. It's a Winchester. It's just definitely a different bone. It's a lot more light brown, and the jigging is different. So I'm confident that what you guys are looking at is what they refer to as the old bone. So you can tell Rusty's really happy with old bones. All right, let me see. I got some more notes. They also release knives in this pattern in celluloid, pearl, stake, brass, and sterling silver. In 1987, they released 7 patterns, 9 in 88. These might be, like they might have released the trapper twice. 6 in 89, 7 in 90, 10 in 91, and 12 in 92. So when you went and you had, you could order your knives. If you were a dealer, you would order them through Bluegrass Cutlery, apparently. And I found this at a Queen blog, Queen Cutlery, on there. So if you were a dealer, you could get dealer prices. All you had to do was purchase a dozen of the knives. And we can see here, if you guys are interested, we have a toothpick with bone. That's 1924, the 3964. I'll go kind of slow in case anybody. We have a bow tie. We have a cast bronze, 2-bladed gunstock. I think that's the one I have. Is that 2921? Let's take a peek. Oh, I got the 2851. All right. We have The 2904, which interestingly is not the one I'm showing you, because I have a 2904 and a half. This is a slimline trapper. Over here, by the way, are the prices. 43, 49, 44. We got their discount, what the retailer would have paid. We have the we have the Serpentine Jack, Teardrop, and this one's called the Texas Jack, kind of like a muskrat. What else did they have? A 3 back spring Whittler, a small Gunstock Jack, that's the one I showed you. We have a lockback, that's a 5 3/8. I think they call that a banana trapper, single bladed. We got a Warncliffe half Whittler, we got a lockback, an equal end. Then we have the Swell center, and this is my favorite. And that one would have ran you 56 retail. What else we got here? We got a Moose, 2913 and a half, a Whittler, a Doctor's, a Cell Belly Stockman. And then they start into some red letter where you get 5. You get they had the Scouts, which came with 2 knives. And then merchandiser displays. You get 32, 24, 32, 45 knives. And they were also doing some John Primble stuff. And by the way, I did a search for one of these and I came across the Bluegrass Cutlery, and you could still find some of their knives, which bring pretty pennies. If you like burnt orange type of buffalo head shields and all that stuff. So I hope you guys will join me as I plan to do a comparison on each one of these knives with other knives. I'll try not to bore you again with the history. I hope a lot of you appreciate the history behind these knives, and I hope to see you in those videos. Thanks, guys.